Okay, students, for this week's assignment, what I'd like you to do first is to do 10 90-second gesture warm-ups. So what you'll need to do is get your phone out and set the timer for 90 seconds and just find some random objects around the house. Or if you want to draw your cat, or if you want to go outside and try to draw some things. But what you're trying to do is just get simple objects and give yourself about 90 seconds to practice this technique of gesture drawing. So for example, if you were going to draw a light bulb, what you want to do is work really rapidly, draw the information very loose and sketchy, put that information down, feel out the volumes of the form, try to feel the gesture, the movement of the different parts, but let it be loose and sketchy. And as that starts to develop, then you can slow yourself down and kind of work over the top. And then you get the sort of indication of what that light bulb is supposed to look like, with some contours sort of laid on top. But the beginning part of these drawings should really be focused on the light scribbly lines. Now I'm using charcoal. You're welcome for these. I would actually recommend using graphite. I'm using charcoal so you can see it in the camera, but when you're working, go ahead and use graphite. Just use it very lightly and get in the habit of holding your pencil further back so that you have more freedom of movement. Now, if you just use one sheet of your drawing paper, you should be able to fit probably about 10 of these on here. You can work a little smaller and just go around and trying to draw different objects with a very gestural sort of feeling. This works really good for things like, if you are to do something, let's say, like a bottle. I'll show you how this works in conjunction with what's referred to as a line of symmetry and the more geometric aspect of drawing. So let's say you were to draw a bottle. The very beginning of the bottle would be very loose. I'm drawing big so you can see. You guys draw a little smaller, obviously. Okay. So I have the basic shape of the bottle, the neck, the vessel, the body, the mouth, but it's very wonky. I mean, obviously when you're gesture drawing, you're not really concerned about anything but sort of the feeling of that shape. But if I was to develop this, one interesting thing I could do is give myself what's referred to as a line of symmetry. That's a line that would pretty much intersect this bottle right in the middle. Then I can take and put perpendicular lines, and these are, I'm drawing them dark, you don't need to draw them as dark, but these are lines that correspond, sorry, let me get here so I can make sure they're perpendicular, good, with information on either side of the bottle. And the idea is that these distances need to be the same on either side. Also, you can draw through your bottle. Ellipses and things like that can work like this. So let's say if there's a label or something, they can correspond to those ellipses. But now that I have this line of symmetry here, I'm going to go ahead and put one down here for the base. Oops. Okay. Just make sure those distances are the same. What I can do then is, using my gesture as a guide, my loose scribbly mess, I can go ahead and go over and draw one side of the bottle. Once that side of the bottle is done, I can simply come over here and recreate exactly what I did. It's so much easier when you have this line of symmetry to mirror the actions that you made on either side of the bottle. Okay, so now my bottle is nice and correct. And I could simply just grab, some sort of light eraser and pull away the messy parts. And what I'm left with is the proper shape of the bottle that I was trying to get. I can take these lines of symmetry out, or these perpendicular lines as well. But now you can see that the bottle is correct. Kind of give you an idea of how these ideas, or the idea of how gesture drawing is supposed to work in tandem with the slower aspects of drawing. So anyways, your first exercise, 10 small drawings of gestures. Really practice drawing through, being scribbly, trying to follow the volumes, and avoiding any outside contours. Please, please, please do not do outside contours until you're nearly done. You want to build those things up in a mess first. Okay, so for your long drawing, once this is finished, I've done about 10 90-second drawings. Go ahead and get out another sheet of your nice white paper. But this time we're going to go ahead and use the whole side of the page. Hey Ozzy, will you grab me a paper towel, please? Yeah. Okay. For this one, I think I'd like you to use fine charcoal. So go ahead and get a piece of fine charcoal that you have out of your kit and figure out what it is that you're going to draw. I think I'll have you guys draw, hopefully you guys can see that. I think I'll have you guys draw stuffed animals, but I'm going to use shoes since that happens to be what I have in front of me. And it'll also kind of tie into what we did last week. I'm going to go ahead and use a little sighting window to give myself an idea of where to draw. And using this fine charcoal, I'm going to gesture. Be very loose and not too concerned. Just capturing the feeling of what it is that I'm looking at. Shadows. Now I'll make them a little bit darker just because I want to make sure you guys are able to see. I know it's part of the problem not having you in real life is that I got to do everything by camera, and so exposure and everything sort of messes with the drawing aspects. But I'm going to draw it a little darker so you can see what I'm talking about. You're welcome to leave yours lighter. In fact, that's probably a better idea. But I have now a simple gesture of what my shoes look like over there. All right, now that that part is done, and you've spent some time developing and working it up, in fact, you can actually add a little more detail if you wish. This gives you the under armature of what your drawing is going to look like. Now, the beauty of gesture drawing, like I said, is it allows you to see if your drawing is going to actually work in the first, 3 minutes or so. Who wants to spend an hour and a half on a drawing that's going to end up looking kind of crummy because you didn't really plan out composition or anything like that? This allows you to figure all that information out. If you like the placement of where everything is, in the first 3 minutes, now you feel much more confident and better about spending extra time on this. So, if you've used fine charcoal, you can take something like a paper towel and simply wipe it away. It may look slightly invisible to you, but there's a really faint remnant of my gesture on here, which I can work on top of quite easily without having to really erase or anything. And so I'm going to use this as my under armature and start slowing myself down, doing maybe kind of a medium speed, sketchy version of a contour. I'm focusing more on contour now, but I'm being a little bit more observant and a little bit slower my information. Still being a bit sketchy though. Just to make sure all my information's about right. Once we learn siding, this would be a good time to be doing siding. We haven't, that's next week's project, but you'll find out that that's something that will be really useful to you. And notice too, I'm starting to deviate from my first gesture. Now that I'm being a little more careful, I'm starting to find places where maybe I wasn't as accurate as I could have been, understandably so. So I'm going to be a little bit more careful now and become more accurate. Start putting in some of the placement of where these crazy lines are. Sorry, shoelaces. Here's a little bit of the seam of those mock toe shoes, boots. That doesn't quite line up right. This needs to come over further. Ah, see, I've made a mistake. Caught it. So I'm just going to copy what I've done, move it over, move this over here, move this over here. You can see that this shoe actually should be more like right about here. Interesting. Good. There's some shadows coming off. And the back line of the table runs about here. All right. So now I have my second version of the drawing, which is a little bit tighter, still kind of in the sketchy phase, but I have more detail for me to look at and to work from. Now at this point, what I would do is slow myself completely down. I would go right back into that sort of drawing that we did on the first day, using this as a guide, and only a guide. Remember, you can always deviate, but to do my contour drawing over the top. So I'll pick a spot, start cruising, using the point of my charcoal pencil, and now I'm using my wooded charcoal pencil, by the way, the 3B, and bringing this out like so. I suspect that this drawing will take you guys anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half if you do it faithfully and do it well. I go a little faster because, like I said, I'm a little more experienced with this. I've done it for a while, but you might need to take time to really examine all the information that you're looking at and making it a little more careful. Okay, so you get the idea. I'm starting to develop my finished drawing on top. And I can always go back in and clean up a little bit later, or some people actually like to leave in the pentimento, the little marks that are left behind. I mean, in some ways, it really talks about the artist's hand, their struggle, their development of the picture plane. It shows how it shows the artist's hand in the work, essentially. All right, for this one, you don't have to do shoes again. If you really wanted to, you could, though what I kind of think would work well is to go find a couple of sort of random stuffed animal buddies, kind of set them up in a way that give them a little character. You know, notice just like in the figure drawing, in the gesture drawing slideshow, we talked about figure drawing, there's a lot of character in these fellows, and the way that they kind of can lean and sort of have, a pose, essentially. And so you can gesture those things out. And then once you get those poses to feel right on your page as a gesture and fill the page well, you can start slowing down and putting information in like felt texture, seams, the details of the mouth and nose, and just develop it more and more, just like you would my drawing of the shoe. Okay, so those are the two things that you're going to need to upload, your exercise and your long drawing. Now, one last thing that I should tell you, once you finish the drawing in charcoal, it will make a mess in your portfolio. It's very likely to smear. Here, I'll even show you. So here's some vine charcoal there. This stuff is very fragile. It can get all over your hands and it can wipe off quite easily. So to keep that from happening, you're gonna need to use some spray fixative. And to do that, I'm not gonna take it outside to show you. One second. To do that, you take your spray fixative and just like spray paint, shake it up really good. Lay this drawing down flat. Take it off your drawing board because you don't want this to get sticky. You don't want the drawing board to get sticky. And maybe put a couple of rocks on the four corners of your drawing. Put it out on the sidewalk or in the yard and do several complete passes from one side to the next, staying about 8 to 12 inches away. Let it sit for a few minutes to dry, maybe do a coat or two more, and then let it sit for a good 5 minutes before you bring it back in the house. It will still have a very strong odor, and for anybody that's sensitive to that, you'd rather keep that smell outside rather than bring it back in your house. Okay,